Congressman Tom Emmer is joining me now from the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. Thanks so much for joining me, sir. How are you?
I'm great. Great. And I'm happy to be with you, Liz.
Well, we've been hearing a bit for a couple days now about how it almost seems there's a different feel in the air where you are there in Milwaukee, this convention this time around. I'm curious if you've noticed that change, of course, since the assassination attempt of former President Trump.
Yeah, no, there definitely is a vibe that, I've been going to these conventions. I was at the one in St. Paul in 2008. I was in Tampa in 2012. I was in Cleveland in 16. I don't really count 20 because they screwed our country up with that pandemic that they declared. This has a totally different feel. What I would say to you, Liz, is the excitement is here. The unity is here, but there's also a certain gratefulness. People are grateful that the good Lord kept Donald Trump safe on Saturday. That failed assassination attempt, I shudder to think what the world would have looked like Sunday morning. The fact that divine providence kept our president on the ground and fighting, I think people here are very grateful for his leadership. And last night, you probably watched as he came onto the arena floor. I think he, who is not a man to exhibit emotion, I think he was trying to control his emotion last night. I think he realizes how big this is when somebody tries to take his life just because of what he believes and what he's fighting for. And I think that's going to make a big difference over the next 112 days as we move to the November 5th election. Donald Trump is going to win. And its big reason is all the work that he's done over the last 4 years and all the bad stuff Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have done.
I'm curious, Congressman, if you've had any direct contact with Trump since Saturday. Have you had a chance to speak with them? And then also describe where you were when you first heard that news and what that was like for you.
Liz, I've communicated with the president, but I have not had a face-to-face yet. We'll see him at some point here at the convention. On Saturday, I was at the hospital because we were having the imminent arrival of our fourth grandchild was on tap. And as we were sitting there, my wife and I, waiting for the kids to tell us that the new one had arrived, this broke. And it was interesting. I watched it, as you probably did. My initial reaction was, oh, thank God he's all right. My next reaction was, this is what makes him so special. This is a 1 in 100 year leader. You only get a personality like this, if you're lucky, once a century. And Donald Trump standing up after being shot and putting his fist in the air defiantly to show everybody, not only here in America that he was okay, but around the world that he's okay. And then saying he's going to fight, we're going to fight. You know this. You're married to someone who's put his life on the line. There are people who run to the fire, and there are people who run away from the fire. Donald Trump showed us who he is again on Saturday night.
On that note, can you say anything about the investigation at this point? We've had Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle say she will not resign. Do you support the effort that seems to be underway to have her fired for what seems to be just this utter failure?
I think that would be too easy. I'm not with, I'm just not one to jump to the conclusion before I know all the facts. There are serious questions here. Liz, if it's true that the Secret Service agents around Trump were requesting additional assets for maybe 6 months before this happened and were denied, if that's true, pretty damning on the Biden administration and Mayorkas. But it's not just that. We got to keep asking ourselves, I can't help myself, how did this kid get on a roof that had an unobstructed view and was so close to the podium that Donald Trump was going to speak at? More importantly, Liz, how did he know to go to that roof? How did he know to buy a 5-foot ladder to get onto that roof? There are so many questions that need to be answered. And before we jump to conclusions, I think it'd be too easy to say, somebody just needs to lose their job and then we'll be okay. No, I think we got to find out what happened, why it happened, and we got to make sure not only that people are held accountable for anything they didn't do, they're failures, but we got to make sure it never happens again.
On Monday, the former president made it official, picking Ohio Senator JD Vance as his running mate, an outspoken Trump critic. He's one to admit that at one point. No secret there. But what is your take on that pick?
I think it's a great pick. I think JD Vance, in an era where all these candidates are in their later years, you now have the youth of the 21st century that is going to be part of this ticket. And it's not just that. It's not just that he's 39, about to be 40 years old. It's that he is the American story. This is a guy who came from very modest means and made himself into an American success story and told his story, put it on paper. I think those things, combined with the fact that I like him because he is the first vice presidential or presidential candidate in the history of our country that owns Bitcoin. I think that talks to an age group, 18 to 40 in this country, that's where they're living. They're living in the internet, and this is the next iteration of the internet. I think it's a great pick. I think people will vote for Donald J. Trump. They're not voting for the vice president, but his vice presidential pick will enhance that message that he has been delivering for so many months now, and it will help all across the country.
You were here with President Trump just a short time ago in St. Paul in May. He told the crowd that night he thinks Minnesota is in play, despite Richard Nixon being the last Republican presidential candidate to carry the state in 72. But what are you hearing from your constituents, especially now, just in the last few days in the 6th District, about why it could be different this time around?
First off, you just brought back a memory, Liz. I was in grade school at Creek Valley Elementary in 1972, and I remember this distinctly for some reason, the McGovern-Nixon election. Look, Minnesota is a unique place. We have a divided way of looking at things. We're much more closely divided, though, than people think. Just because you have Democrats in the governor's office and controlling the legislature, don't for a second think that this is all a blue state. There's a lot of people who understand the damage that has been done by this administration. And let's just go back to 2016, Liz. Donald Trump came within 1.5 points of winning Minnesota in 2016. You know what's changed since then? Failed Democrat leadership has been up front and personal, especially in Minnesota, where they blew through $17 to $18 billion in surplus. They added another, $9.5 billion in taxes and new fees. And then they passed laws that were so radical. Abortion on demand up until seconds before the birth of a child. The trans refuge of it's just crazy. I think Minnesotans, we believe in fairness. I believe Minnesotans understand what's at stake in this election. If you want more failing economy where housing prices have become very unaffordable and credit card debt is at record highs, where average Americans are spending $1,000 more a month for things that they've been buying before Biden became president, $12,000 a year. If you are okay with an open southern border, and if you are willing to look the other way at the chaos around the world that has been caused by a lack of a foreign policy, and because no one fears Joe Biden and his feckless administration, okay, I suppose Joe Biden would be an option. If you want an economy that works for everyone, if you want safety and security in this country with a secure border, and if you want safety and security and peace around the world, Donald Trump is the only choice. And I do think he's going to turn Minnesota red in November.
Lastly, I just want to ask, because it's interesting, a lot of messaging coming out of the RNC this week, embracing early voting, embracing mail-in voting. What would you tell those Minnesotans who are listening or watching as the election now just a bit over 100 days away, when perhaps still there isn't that comfort level yet with embracing those ideas of early voting?
Well, it's not just coming out of the RNC, Liz. Donald Trump, if you go back and look at his truths that he posts, more than 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago now, posted, we need to be voting early. We need to make sure that we do this. So it's not just the RNC. This is the president himself that is suggesting we need to make sure our votes are getting in. What I would say to Minnesotans, you got to be involved. You got to be alert. You got to be aware. Volunteer as as an election judge. You don't have to serve as an election judge in the precinct where you vote. You can serve anywhere. Volunteer. Be there. Be eyes and ears in the polling place. We need to hold ourselves accountable, and we need to make sure that we don't just turn over the integrity of our election process to Steve Simon in the Secretary of State's office and the local county authorities. Let's be part of it, Liz. Get involved. Be there. Pay attention. They tell you at the airport to report something that doesn't look right. Do the same thing in our elections. Let's start holding ourselves accountable and making sure that we protect the integrity of the vote.
Representative Tom Emmer, certainly appreciate the time, if I may say as well. Congratulations again, Grandpa. But enjoy your time in Milwaukee.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Liz.
Thanks for joining me.